Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from. My name is Tessie Katsambas, and I'm the founder and CEO of Encompass LLC, an evaluation and training organization that was a 2024 Youth in Evaluation Super Champion for its support of young and emerging evaluators, and I will be your moderator today. I'm thrilled to welcome you to the third Future of Evaluation Dialogue, which is part of a new monthly dialogue series that is the cornerstone of Eval for Action 2.0. We have with us today Silvia Salinas, former president of the International Organization for Cooperation in Evaluation. Over to you, Silvia.
Thank you very much, dear Tessie. I'm very honored to be here today and to pass the torch. In doing so, I carry forward the spirit and outcomes of our previous dialogue, a shared commitment to making evaluation a tool for peace and resilience building. I wish you an inspiring, enriching, and action-oriented dialogue ahead. Thank you very much.
Silvia, thank you. I am so pleased to receive the torch as the moderator of the third dialogue. The Future of Evaluation Dialogues brings together evaluation experts and leaders, young and emerging evaluators, new voices in the evaluation community and beyond, to explore how innovative approaches and adaptations can make evaluation more influential today and tomorrow, given the evolving global landscape that we all see and know so much about. So this dialogue today is a celebration of the United Nations Day, which is the 80th anniversary. So UN 80 is being celebrated today. So join me quietly in applauding for our United Nations. Today we are discussing the question, how can evaluation shape a future fit United Nations? Our esteemed panelists will examine the evaluation's pivotal role in forging a future fit United Nations. We ask, how can evaluation further enhance the United Nations' effectiveness, efficiency, and agility? How can evaluation ensure accountability, adaptation, and continuous learning? How can evaluation catalyze interagency work to strengthen multilateralism and bolster the global evaluation ecosystem? To discuss this today, we have four experts with deep experience in evaluation in the United Nations context and beyond. I will introduce them and you will get to meet them right now. Mr. Mesai Tasu works in the UNFPA Independent Evaluation Office in Nairobi as an evaluation advisor, and he leads centralized evaluations on key thematic priorities. He has also worked in evaluation at UNDP and at UN Women. Mesai, tell us, what is important for you about this topic?
Thank you very much, Tessie, and I'm truly excited to be part of this important dialogue, one that really speaks directly to the heart of the UN reform. And broadly speaking, if we take a step back, the UN has undergone several reforms throughout its history, but in the grand scheme of things, UN 80 is perhaps one of the most consequential reforms that carries a whole lot of significance. And in this context, what makes this topic so important is the consistent call from member states, and the message is clear. The world still needs the UN, but it needs the UN that is more effective, more coherent, more accountable, and truly fit for purpose. And this is precisely where I see a great opportunity for evaluation to play a catalytic role in shaping a future fit UN. But for this to happen, I would say evaluation should remain at the very center of important discourse. It cannot be an afterthought or arriving after the fact, but right at the table when discussions are really being made. And it's safe to me to say that across the UN system, there already exists a rich ecosystem of evaluation knowledge built over years or decades. And the continuous challenge for the evaluation community is to strategically embed those evaluation insights into critical debates and decisions so that they reach the right decision-making bodies at the right time to support adaptation, learning, inclusion in the face of this very dynamic and unpredictable context. And this is my quick take on this question. Over to you, Tessie.
Thank you, Masai. And clearly you bring so much experience in the UN context so that you can help us make everything quite applicable to make a difference in the United Nations. So next up, we have Ms. Neamari Heinonen. She is the lead evaluation specialist at the Independent Evaluation Unit of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Finland, where she manages evaluations. She has piloted also data science and artificial intelligence techniques in the ministry. So she has worked with the UN in evaluation. So Neamari, what is exciting about this topic for you?
Thank you very much for inviting me for this panel. I'm very excited about joining this event. As a former UNFPA M&E officer, the invitation feels extra special for me. I joined this panel as an expert of the Independent Evaluation Unit of our ministry and will speak from that perspective only, not on behalf of the overall ministry. I want to congratulate the United Nations and all of its organizational entities for reaching a mature age. It is an honor to join the celebrations of the 80th anniversary with all of you. Finland is a committed supporter of multilateralism. In today's world of global polycrises, it's important that actors such as the United Nations remain and prosper. At 80, the UN is no spring chicken anymore. With mature age, there is a lot of accumulated wisdom in the system. But have we remained agile and fit enough to secure future activities? How can we secure a future-fit United Nations? This is not the time for the United Nations to retire. On the contrary, in today's world, faced with polycrises spanning the climate change and loss of biodiversity, conflicts and war, the anti-human rights and anti-gender movements, eroding democracy and space for civil society, disinformation, budget cuts, and so many others, we need multilateral cooperation more than ever. The UN should retain its strong role in defending human rights and gender equality, the 2030 Agenda and sustainable development, climate action, and peace and security. The United Nations should foster innovations, leverage digitalization to boost development, and improve risk management to take on the uncertainties and complexities of the future. Similarly, then, it is important to ensure evaluation remains fit for navigating this challenging playing field. I look very much forward to the discussions on these topics today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Neamari, and you definitely represent a wonderful partner to the whole movement of global partnership and evaluation, being there from the beginning, from 2012, when Eval Partners was first established. So it's a pleasure to have you here. So next we turn to Dr. Julia Betts. She is Director of Evaluation at the World Food Programme with deep experience in evaluations of humanitarian assistance, especially in conflict-afflicted situations, and also gender and equity concerns. Julia, why is this topic important today?
Thanks, Tessie. I guess as a disclaimer first, I'm not the director, I'm the deputy director of evaluation here at WFP, but it's great to be here and we're very excited to be part of the dialogue. So I'm excited to be here for two main reasons. So as my colleagues have said, and as Mari has just recognized, the UN is 80 and UN reform is gaining momentum now through the UN 80 paper that the Secretary General has just published. And as part of that, the humanitarian reset is a really strong stream throughout that process. And WFP is very engaged in the humanitarian reset, and evaluation is a really key part of that. It enables the injection of different thought processes, and it enables us to bring in the perspectives of different stakeholders, sometimes directly and sometimes less directly. So now we find that the evaluation discipline is more important than ever, in fact. And the second reason I'm excited to be part of this process is that evaluation is a very strong community. we're a set of committed stakeholders across the world, in different partners, in different agencies, in different ministries, and in different communities. And as a community, maybe we don't always agree, and maybe we have sometimes very strong opinions and not always in agreement with each other, but communities talk. And so having a dialogue is a real opportunity to talk, to hear each other, and to listen. And so it's great for WFP to be part of that conversation. Thanks, Tessie, and back to you.
Thank you, Julia. And it's great to have you here because the WFP is kind of at the forefront of some of the crises that are happening today. So you're in such a good position to help lead us, our thinking in how we can be fit for purpose and how the UN can be fit for purpose. Thank you. Our fourth panelist is Ms. Taipei Dlamini. She works for the UNESCO Evaluation Office as Evaluation Specialist. She manages programs and strategies in education, science, communication, and she builds capacity among staff. She is also the co-convener of UNEG's Young and Emerging Evaluation Working Group. That's the United Nations Evaluation Group, UNEG. And so, Taipei, what is exciting for you about this topic?
Thank you, Tessie, for having me today and for including me in this conversation as well. As my colleagues already mentioned, this is a very timely conversation as the UN has reached 80 years. I think it's also a reminder, as we are going through a crisis of our own in the UN, that the UN was actually born out of crisis. So a different type of crisis, but it was born out of crisis as it was created right after the Second World War. And it had a clear objective at the time, building and maintaining peace. That is still very true today. UNESCO's constitution specifically states that since wars begin in the minds of men, it is in the minds of men that the defenses of peace must be constructed. So I think that we all in this room agree with this mandate and the importance of peace. Yet today we find ourselves again in a time of crisis, and the UN system is increasingly being challenged. Funding is depleting. Member states are asking for and more transparency and agility. Conflict is unfortunately on the rise, and some of the issues that the UN was meant to address are still very prevalent today. So I've noticed how the general public and younger generations in particular seem to increasingly question the relevance of the UN and what it brings to the table. Essentially, trust in the UN is slowly eroding. So rather than the mandate of peace itself, I believe what is being questioned is how we as an institution achieve the lofty goals of peace. Beyond the speeches and conferences, what is being done concretely in terms of projects and programs to change people's lives on the ground in villages, cities, countries around the world? And how do we truly contribute to peace? So that's precisely where evaluation comes in. We are there to assess the effectiveness of the different programs being implemented by the UN. We're there to draw lessons from past experiences and feed into the design of new projects so that they can be improved and be more impactful. So as we celebrate 80 years of existence, I'm happy to be here today and to discuss this further and see how the evaluation community can better contribute to building a stronger UN that will still be present and relevant for the next years.
Thank you so much, Taipei, for grounding us in the real vision and purpose of the United Nations, especially today. And thank you to all our panelists for being here. One of the things that I just want our audience to notice is that every one of us, and certainly our panelists, have their own sphere of control. So this is not just a conversation. It's how we shape the future together. It's what we're going to do as we leave in our local places. And therefore, it's about all of us, and it's about you. Our panelists are bringing a very creative perspective to the table, and they will continue to stimulate our thinking, and we want to hear from you as well. So let's just go to our audience and shake things up a little bit. We're going to launch a quick live poll with a bold statement. Something just to challenge our assumptions, our thinking, as we try to unpack this topic and really discuss opportunities and roadblocks for key contributions of the United Nations today. So this is here, you see on your screen our bold statement. Evaluation isn't a report card. It's sometimes the uncomfortable mirror the UN needs to truly innovate for a world in crisis. So please go ahead and vote. Agree, disagree, or a nuanced view. You're uncomfortable with the topic or with the statement rather. And in the meantime, I also invite those who are watching us live on LinkedIn and in the Zoom to answer questions by commenting. So there's a Q&A section later where you will have a chance to speak your thoughts. And by then, I know with all the stimulation, they will have matured to some exciting ideas that you will share with us. But right now, just give us your sense of your view of this statement. In your view, is evaluation this uncomfortable mirror that the UN needs to truly innovate in a world of crisis? Agree or disagree, or something else? Another thought. I know evaluators are not used to closed questions. We always see all of the assumptions, but it will be interesting to see where you stand. So our producers will let me know how we're doing on voting, and then we'll take a look. Okay, so let's end the poll and see where people stand, just to get an idea. So there's a lot of agreement. 93% agree, 1% disagree, and 6% with a nuanced view. So that's interesting. In general, we are excited about this statement. We like this way of phrasing things, that the evaluation needs to be an uncomfortable mirror. So I wanted to get a sense from our panelists, as you've heard the voice of our participants, and now tell us, where do you stand on this? Do you agree, disagree? And feel free, of course, to comment on any of the comments of other colleagues. And so, Julia, let me turn it over to you. What's your sense on this question?
Thanks, Tessie, and thanks, colleagues. So it's an interesting question to ask, and had I been able to respond to the poll, I'd probably have said I have a nuanced view. I agree with the first part of the statement, but I'm not sure about the second. So is an evaluation an uncomfortable mirror? Absolutely, or it has the potential to be anyway. We're the only discipline, or one of the few disciplines anyway, that really have the ability to speak truth to power within our agencies, within our environments. If we have the evidence and we communicate that evidence well, we can often communicate uncomfortable positions. We also have the systems and the structures around us, at least within the UN system anyway, that enable us to, that protect us really, I think, in our independence. We have structural, functional, and behavioral and other forms of independence. And we have norms and standards that govern our delivery. That enables us, in theory, if not in practice, to support us in telling those uncomfortable truths to those in power. And it enables us as a UN agency anyway at WFP to bring in other perspectives. So when we gather perspectives from different stakeholders that we then communicate in our evaluations, we enable the UN or our agency at WFP to look beyond itself. We can be very inward looking in the UN system. And I think that one of the strengths that evaluation brings to our agency is to say, look, others think this about WFP, where it's delivering. And sometimes that truth is not always comfortable for our senior leaders to hear. Where I'm less confident on the statement is the second part. Does it really enable the UN to innovate, even in a time of crisis, as Taipei mentioned? Well, for me, that comes back to the old question of the use of evidence. We all grapple with that. We can do very nice evaluations, as we know, but then they can often remain on the shelf. What can make the UN actually innovate and use our evidence in its innovation? Partly that's down to our partners and stakeholders, whether they're willing and whether they have the appetite to confront the uncomfortable truth that evaluation may communicate. But partly it's on us as a discipline to make sure that our evidence is well grounded, well evidenced, well communicated, well packaged, and that our evaluation processes, as well as our products, communicate that evidence in a way that's accessible, that we use the entry points that we have, and that then the messages are framed in a way that really enable it to be well received. For us at WFP, as you mentioned, Tessie, in the forefront of crises, we're in Yemen, we're in Afghanistan, we're in Gaza, we're in Somalia, across the world. As the agency inevitably goes through a contraction at this time, that evidence can really help show our leaders and managers where WFP can be more relevant, more effective, where it can help realize humanitarian aims the best. But to do that, we really do need to be able to package our evidence in a way that inspires confidence in our stakeholders and leaders. And that really, as a discipline, is on us. Thanks, Tessie. Back to you.
Thank you, Julia. And thank you for reminding us that evaluation alone cannot lead to innovation, that it needs some other parts, and evaluation always fits in within a bigger context. Plays an important role, but is not alone. Can't do it. Thank you. Taipei, over to you. What do you think about this concept and this image of a mirror of evaluation being a mirror for the United Nations? Over to you.
I would say I tend to agree with the statement. It's what evaluation should be. Typically, whenever I start an evaluation, I constantly remind program staff that I cannot preempt the results of the evaluation. I cannot guarantee that the outcome of the evaluation will be positive. That will depend on the results and the evidence that we collect. So we are not here as evaluators to please anyone, whether that's program staff, donors, member states. Our primary duty is to tell the truth and state facts. We're here to ensure that the programs that our agencies and organizations have promised to deliver on are really achieving the objectives they set out to achieve. Are they yielding the results that are needed, that are sustainable, and that generate impact at the country level? So to do that, we need to make sure that we collect evidence accurately and rigorously, and we present all the facts as they are, whether those are good or bad, and propose true innovation and real solutions. I agree with Julia that it's not only dependent on evaluators. Innovation also comes from all the stakeholders that are involved in a program or in a project. But the evaluation can trigger questions or bring about some realizations that perhaps don't happen in the daily implementation of a project or a program. So it's a key moment to bring together all stakeholders, discuss, exchange, and learn from what has actually happened, to then steer decisions that will help better inform projects, better design projects, and better implement projects. So integrity, honesty, and transparency are key, not only in the process of the evaluation, but also in the report itself. But unfortunately, today, we're not always fully achieving these objectives. It seems sometimes that evaluations are seen as a mandatory exercise that program staff want to finish as soon as possible, and they don't see it as a genuine moment for learning and exchange that can bring about positive change. So I think that's partly due to the publication of reports or how we communicate on reports. And I will get back to that a little bit more later. But I think we need to carefully think about the right balance between accountability and transparency on one hand, and putting in place the conditions to really foster learning and grow from the evaluation process. Thank you. Back to you, Tessie.
Thank you, Taipei. And I really am embellishing this mirror as a participatory, uncomfortable mirror, but one that has characterized with integrity, honesty, and giving people an opportunity to reflect. So thank you for embellishing that important mirror for us called evaluation. So let me turn it over now to Mesai. What do you think? Do you agree or disagree with that statement, Mesai?
Thank you, Tessie. My take is similar to the other panelists, but with a nuanced view. I totally agree that evaluation should not be bogged down or reduced to a very simplistic binary judgment of success or failure or report card. This is due to the fact that I think looking at the environment that we are operating, this is really constantly evolving and becoming really so much complex. And this means that the UN operations and programming demand adaptive responses, continuous learning, and system thinking that certainly goes beyond performance matrices. So this is not to suggest we abandon or walk away from accountability. Accountability remains central to the evaluation work. But the key point I would like to underline is we need just to find right balance. Yes, evaluation should certainly uncover uncomfortable mirror. And it really helps us, as a key instrument in terms of looking at, what works, what doesn't work, and to whom and why. But at the same time, I think we need just to situate, the evaluation within the broader complexity where we operate across, the humanitarian and development space. And having said this, I also see, a great opportunity to reposition or reimagine evaluation into a more forward-looking instrument to guide strategic foresight. Especially looking at all these dimensions happening around the world in relation to digitization, artificial intelligence. These are really transforming how we deliver services, be it on education, health, governance, or other areas. And these new technologies hold immense potential to shape how development will be carried out. So this means I think our evaluation approach must go beyond looking backward by asking future-oriented questions such as building on what I have already said, how might digital transformation or AI reshape the UN's comparative advantage, or what kind of partnership will matter in the next decade, or how can we ensure that the values at the heart of the UN, be it equality, equity, and human rights, remain central as we adapt to a rapidly evolving world. So within this broader context, as well as the need to adjust to the dynamic and evolving global context, I think this kind of pivots and adjustments are some of the things that we need to experiment as an evaluation community to make our evaluation relevant, but more importantly, to make programming more adaptive and forward-looking to changing realities. So it's not like as a yes or no, fail and success type of arrangement, but we need just to understand the interdependence, interconnectivity, as well as the complexity of the intervention that we're working and supporting from the UN side, so that we need just to frame it in a broader angle without really compromising, of course, the independence, utility, and credibility of our evaluation activities. Over.
Thank you, Mesai. And what I'm really taken with this image of the mirror. So what I'm getting from what you're saying is, let's pay attention on where we turn this mirror, and what we're really learning, and how what we're learning fits into the broader context, and maybe turn it a little bit on ourselves. How do we need to be fit for purpose with all the changes that are happening? We evaluators or managers of evaluation, with all the changes that are happening with AI, with big data, so that we can be fit for purpose and catch up, or maybe innovate ourselves. So the challenge is getting bigger. So now, Nea Marie, what do you think about this statement?
Sorry, I had a tech problem. Thank you. I do tend to agree to a great extent, but not 100%. So a nuanced view. I think the statement isn't true just for the UN, but for all kinds of organizations, including my own organization. It's indeed the role of any evaluation function to sometimes act as an uncomfortable mirror, but also to provide food for thought, and to serve as a forum for bringing different actors together for a collective review about the evaluand. I'm not sure whether evaluation itself needs a complete innovation or reform, yes, evaluation as a field and a function needs to adapt to the world that we live in and be able to perform in these challenging times. But there are so many different types of evaluations, and each serve a unique purpose and information need. Stating that all evaluation needs to change or reinvent itself would not do justice to the field, I feel. Incorporating the systems approach is not just about applying systems thinking in a given evaluation, but also to consider UN as a system and what systemic or system level effects and transformation it can facilitate. For the UN, I personally see a need for system-wide evaluations more and more, which ideally wouldn't depend on external funding. Such evaluations would address system-wide matters at a strategic level beyond what the very good job done by different agencies and agency-specific or joint evaluations can take on. At the same time, making use of and brokering the already existing knowledge will be key in the future. That is jam-packed with information, as we know. While using existing knowledge may not satisfy all accountability needs, and the primary data will still need to be collected, I'm convinced that some room for efficiency gains will still exist for us. Drawing system-wide lessons does not preclude that evaluations will still be needed at country level too. Meaningful, coordinated, and strategic presence at country level is what secures efficient results, together with the national actors and owners of the work. At best, evaluation isn't a report card, but the whole process serves to build ownership and capacity of institutions and actors, such as national governments. Evaluation is not the only uncomfortable mirror, and it shouldn't be the only one either. It should complement other oversight and knowledge functions. As long as evaluation does at times function as an uncomfortable mirror, I'm not worried. I would be worried though if it didn't. We, the evaluation function, should be careful about not relapsing into evaluation that does not serve evidence-based policy, but instead serves policy-based evidence. The UN evaluation functions, and those in other organizations too, should stay vigilant in maintaining independent and evidence-based perspectives. The UN has been and is currently committed to implementing reforms to better meet the challenges of the future. While continuing on these reform paths, the UN should carefully review the lessons from these reforms. And of course, we know that evaluations are a crucial avenue for these. Thank you.
Thank you, Namari, and thank you for reminding us that we are all part of this system. It's not about what just the UN does, but what we all do, because it's in our collaboration that big changes can happen, and it takes everyone, people, and as you said, people locally who will have to act locally. So local evaluation is important. Connecting to global is important. We all get smarter when we look at things across the board. And we will also turn our attention in a little bit and put Masai on the spot in thinking about that collaboration. So you gave us a lot to think about. Thank you. I want to remind our audience that please, you can put in the questions section of the webinar your comments and questions. It's not just our questions, it's not just our comments, and we are going to be incorporating what you tell us as we go along. And a little bit later, you'll have a chance to also to speak. But more importantly, we are collecting all your questions and we want them to be part of this dialogue. So our panelists have given us a lot to think about already. We have a image of this uncomfortable mirror that, if I might ask my own question about this mirror, let's think about how to make speaking truth and looking at difficult things less uncomfortable and more empowering. So a little bit about what Masai said about future oriented is not only the data, it's not only the questions, it's also helping people to feel confident that they can tackle those things. So we evaluators, as we turn the mirror to ourselves, let's also think about our capacity and our role, because we are internal to that system. So I just love this concept of the mirror, as you can see. Now we're going to dive a little bit deeper and look at some separate questions for each of our panelists. And again, I want to remind you to go ahead and post your comments, your reactions to what you hear. If you hear something you love, tell us. If you hear something that puzzles you, tell us. If you hear something you disagree with, tell us. It's not uncomfortable. It's why we're here. So please go ahead with that. Now, my first question goes to Julia. Now, Julia, you're not only in a position as Deputy Director of Leadership for an agency that works in the hardest and most challenging situations today, but you also bring a lot of experience as an evaluator who has worked and managed evaluations in those contexts. So from both of those perspectives, beyond traditional metrics, how can evaluation effectively capture the intangible impacts of the UN's work, such as fostering trust or building capacity to inform future strategies? And you will see this question appear in the chat so that you can track and focus on our question with us. So Julia, over to you.
Thanks, Tessie, and thanks, colleagues. It's a very interesting question to ask and a very timely one as well, particularly as I think Taipei mentioned at the beginning, the benefits of the UN and what the UN brings to the world stage are not always obvious, particularly to younger generations coming through. So it's more important than ever, really, that we do demonstrate our capacity and our ability to measure things which aren't always tangible. At WFP, the agency here has gone through a transition in recent years. We used to do pure delivery of food assistance, often what we call in-kind, which is actual food products. We then moved into cash over time, and now a lot of our work as well is focused on capacity strengthening. Yet our evaluations, which we do in a whole range of settings across the world, consistently find that our corporate results framework, so the framework on which we report to our partners, our stakeholders, and our donors, don't always reflect the work that country offices are doing, the hard graft at country level to work with governments, to work with stakeholders, to work with partners, to support them to deliver food assistance in different forms to affected populations. So how can we, as an evaluation function, help bring that to light and make it more visible? That's really a question we've been grappling with here. So one thing that we've been experimenting, or rather our independent teams have been experimenting recently, is using outcome harvesting more purposefully. It's not always the most easy methodology to implement, particularly when you're working with busy country offices who are dealing with humanitarian responses and who don't have a lot of time. But what we've found is that if we do explain what we're doing up front to our country level stakeholders, if we explain the benefits that it can bring, if we have a good facilitator or a good evaluation team who can really implement that well, it can be a very beneficial exercise, both for the evaluation itself, but more specifically, as you mentioned, Tessie, for the evaluation process. And what we're trying to do here is to almost weight the two equally in terms of the benefits that they can bring for our country stakeholders who are going through such difficult times at the moment. So we had a recent experience in one country and we looked at what had made it work well. Well, some of the things that worked well were explaining upfront, as I mentioned, the benefits that it can bring, so that our partners were very clear on why they should invest time on this and how it can be helpful for them and what they will get out of it ultimately. A really well facilitated process where our evaluation lead was able to sit down with the country office on an independent basis, having done all the preparation, and talk through what kind of areas they were working in terms of capacity strengthening and what benefits they were bringing. And thirdly, a willingness to really reflect back with the country office and share those findings as part of the evaluation process. and be willing in that discussion to confront some uncomfortable truths. And that made the evaluation process and the process of sharing the report, which can be a little bit mechanistic, much easier because the country office was actually prepared for that. Strengths and weaknesses had been identified ex ante, and it made the process run more fluidly. It's not always easy to capture those intangible benefits, but if you've had a multi-stakeholder process, if you've engaged with government and heard their perceptions, if you've engaged with other partners and heard their perceptions, and if you report on that in a well-triangulated and well-evidenced way, then that enables us as a discipline to really bring those findings through and make them much more visible. So that's one of the ways that we have been working on showing capacity benefits. And as I say, that what that means for us is an implication in terms of ensuring that our process allows time for that, that we have our communications lined up around it, and that we really, it's attention to really maintaining that independence that Nea Mari talked about and that impartiality, to be sure that while we're having our participatory process, the evaluation findings remain independent, remain credible, and remain valid, so that our stakeholders can trust in them. Thanks, Tessie. Back to you.
Thank you, Julia. And it's exciting to hear about the intentional partnership with actors at country level, which has actually characterized WFP increasingly over the years. And clearly, it's so important to make sure this is captured and shared, that this is part of the story of the independent evaluation. So figuring out how to do that is not only important to complete the story, but also to give hope and show the possibility of being able, local partners who are capable and supported to move forward and to do good things in their countries. So very exciting to hear that, and certainly seems to be a key element here, a key strategy for making the UN fit for purpose for UN80. Thank you. So now we turn to Nea Mari. And Nea Mari, we are asking you to speak to a question that relates to agility and adaptability. And here it is. In an increasingly complex and interconnected world, what innovative evaluation methodologies can the UN adopt to assess its agility and adaptability in responding to emerging global challenges? And you will see this question also in your chat. Over to you, Nea Mari.
Thank you for this question. I always feel a little bit uncomfortable to call anything innovative, because it might feel innovative to some people, but then it could be yesterday's news or business as usual to others. But first of all, I agree with Messe that AI really does have a transformative power. So first of all, this is something that is happening now, and we can't really dismiss the transformation that is going on. Not just AI, but more in generally speaking, all kinds of analytics, data science and text analytics and all that sort. Several UN agencies have spearheaded AI applications in evaluation and knowledge products. The UN also, at a broader level, has served as a global forum bringing together global thought leaders on these topics. Adaptability, systems thinking, and complexity are not always easy for human mind to grasp. Automation and AI can help make more efficient use of existing knowledge and assist in meta-analysis and synthesis. Machine learning solutions could come in handy when making forecasts or adaptive risk management, for instance. We all need to not just invest in experts, but also invest in AI literacy and basic skills for staff on responsible uses of AI. What about any readiness assessments? Have we done those? Our unit, for instance, has developed an AI-assisted tool, OpenEval, an open access platform where where the users can search evaluative evidence from our evaluations. Basically, just to meet the challenge that Julia mentioned, that we don't want our evaluation reports to remain on the shelf. So basically, we can have that platform where the whole host of evaluative evidence is accessible. Well, that said, we should also be vocal about the fact that using existing knowledge may be fruitful for learning and planning purposes, but we shouldn't forget about the accountability purpose for evaluations. And for that, we will still need independent evaluations in the future. So AI can't replace those, and they shouldn't really be replaced by AI. We still need human judgment in these. These are times where it's critical that the importance of generating and using independent evidence should really be top priority. Alongside evaluation, there's undoubtedly going to be an increasing need for real-time data in general. For adaptive management and agility, real-time monitoring data will be key. Geospatial and other remote sensing data, for instance, should be made better use of, while of course also respecting privacy and data security at the same time. What about any, I should say, crowdsourcing data from a key informant to use or something like that to really react to any adaptability needs? I'm just throwing in some ideas here. Although many of these technological advances offer exciting efficiency gains for evaluation, it is still increasingly important to ensure that no one is left behind and that we secure human perspectives and voices in evaluation, not just in the sense of human in the loop to verify data and information, but to ensure participation and representation by different people. Evaluation should make visible the plethora of viewpoints and actors and present a diverse and nuanced picture to remain credible and balanced. When you ask how evaluation shape a future fit UN, the logical next question is, what information about the future do evaluations produce? Evaluations have an inherent futures orientation in that they produce recommendations for action, but often those recommendations are based on lessons and data from the past. We should consider incorporating futures methods as part of mixed methods evaluations that most of us do anyway. How do we gain information about the future fit UN if we don't apply any futures methods in our evaluations? Also, I suspect there is room for each of us to build better connections between evaluation and foresight functions of our organizations. Does the staff have future skills and futures literacy skills so that we can understand that there are alternative futures and paths that are shaped in the present? All of these are relevant questions also for the evaluation field.
Thank you, Namari. Thank you so much for giving us a stimulation here to think about all of the different ways that we need to evolve ourselves and get comfortable working in this new era of data, real-time data, rapid accessibility, technology, AI. It's definitely a frontier where we need to keep getting smarter as fast as possible. Thank you. So now, Taipei, over to you. I would like to ask you a question that builds on your role as a catalyst, a person focused on capacity building, leading the work with young and emerging evaluators in the UN system. And here's the question. How can evaluation be leveraged not just as a tool for accountability, but as a proactive mechanism to drive transformative organizational change? Over to you.
Thank you, Tessie. I'd start by saying that evaluation has three main purposes. Accountability is one of them, but so is learning and evidence-based decision-making. I find in my own experience that there's somewhat of an imbalance between these three purposes. And lately, the focus has shifted more towards accountability. This is an important element, but it has its problems as well. So first, why has it shifted towards accountability? Julia mentioned this earlier in one of her statements earlier, that our evaluation functions are independent and are increasingly being institutionalized. This means that evaluation is now mandated by our policies, Program staff have to provide a management response in which they explain how they intend to implement recommendations that are issued in our evaluations and have to justify themselves, essentially. Evaluations are also public. This is excellent to showcase positive results, but it also means that the UN's weaknesses, faults may sometimes be displayed for everyone to see. So this has created an environment where perhaps program staff are a bit shy around evaluation and worry that sometimes we may be critical and that this may be shooting ourselves in the foot, essentially. So the trade-off of this transparency and making sure that evaluations are public and done regularly has been that perhaps we've moved away from learning and facilitating innovation. We're more risk-averse and not prepared to try things that are a little bit different. So to go back to the initial balance, I think we need to focus our attention a little bit more on learning. We need to make sure that the knowledge and findings collected through evaluations truly contribute to shaping better policies and driving transformation and true organizational change whenever needed. So how can we do that? First, I'd say we need to look at how we produce our evaluation reports, so the product itself. When analyzing pilots or innovative projects, I think it's important that we highlight the innovation as something positive. Whether the results of that innovation are positive or negative, we should encourage innovation, encourage program staff to try out new things, new approaches, new methodologies, and see whether that works or not. We still, of course, have to be objective in assessing whether these have been effective or not, but let's not stifle innovation. We also could move away from the typical evaluation structure, which is structuring the evaluation report along the lines of the evaluation criteria. This has enabled some form of standardization. It's important in our evaluation norms and standards. It allows for comparison also across different evaluation reports and across different agencies, but it has made sometimes reports a bit dry and not always tailored to the needs of the program staff. So perhaps we could consider moving away from that structure along the evaluation criteria and consider structuring reports along themes that are relevant directly to the evaluand. In terms of process, we could consider carefully constructing our evaluation reference groups. They always have to be inclusive, of course, and I think it's important that we also include younger colleagues and beneficiaries, steering committees that include youth that are the future, and that will also learn from these processes and feed these findings and these learnings back into the system for many, many years to come. So not only focus on more senior representatives being represented in the evaluation reference group. In terms of communication, I think it's important we have strong feedback loops to share relevant information beyond the reference group and beyond governing bodies that we report to. So this can be as simple as sending an email to some staff that we think are relevant to highlight the key findings of an evaluation. It could be producing a newsletter that is disseminated across the organization, or having perhaps structured monthly or quarterly presentations to present key findings and key recommendations from an evaluation. For example, I know I had noticed that a few years ago, the Asian Development Bank was organizing these types of quarterly presentations at the level of the entire organization, and also published on LinkedIn to learn more about the findings of an evaluation that they had completed. Another tool that we could use is preparing specific tools and documents for staff that will not be published as part of the evaluation report. So this is particularly interesting when it's perhaps a more critical evaluation where the findings are a bit more negative. We will publish a report that is public, but it's also important to take the time to delve into why things did not happen as well, what were the issues, and have those discussions with staff in a safe space where perhaps they'll be more open to exchanging information, learning, and trying to understand what went wrong. These are just a few examples of what we could try to consider to make sure that really the evidence that comes out from these evaluations also is focused on learning, also provides valuable insight for decision making, not only for governing bodies, not only for management, but for the program staff that will be implementing projects in the future as well.
Thank you, Taipei. Lots of ideas for how to make evaluation more focused on organizational change, learning, and just make it more relevant at every step, more culturally appropriate. So thank you for all of your ideas, and we'll hear also, I'm sure, from our audience about what they think are good strategies. So now I'm going to turn to Mesai to bring it all together, because his question focuses on the United Nations. So lots of things we've talked about. And now Mesai, tell us, how can interagency and joint evaluations contribute to strengthening the global evaluation ecosystem? How can they contribute to fostering more effective and cohesive responses to global challenges? Over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Tessie. For me, when we talk about joint evaluations, the starting point is recognizing the interconnected nature of today's global challenge. Just to give you one classic example in UNFPA, one of the transformative results is ending preventable maternal deaths. And this is not a health achievement alone, but a result of complex cross-sectoral interaction among multiple SDGs: health, education, gender equality, water, nutrition, health, climate, and infrastructure. So this means we need to look at the entire ecosystem and the interactions, the interdependencies, and the shared responsibilities across different actors that shape outcomes. And within this broader framework, I think, and Mari already mentioned, I would say joint evaluations play a vital role in strengthening system-wide coherence, collective intelligence, as well as accountability. Encouragingly, I think within the UN system, we are seeing more evaluation officers joining hands to synthesize existing evaluation evidence and assess collective performance. And there are also very strong examples beyond the UN system. And a good example is, the joint evaluation of the collective international response to the COVID response, which was led by OECD DAC. And this evaluation stands out as a powerful demonstration of what joint evaluation can achieve, not only in terms of providing a very holistic view of international development in humanitarian response, but also in strengthening the global evaluation ecosystem and advancing shared learning. Because this particular evaluation, I was not part of it, but I think it just brought together 60 institutions, including UNFPA. So this is really the power of, how well-designed evaluation can be a powerful tool in terms of fostering those global evaluation ecosystem and advanced shared learning. And more specifically at UNFPA Independent Evaluation Office, we are also taking this joint approach very seriously. Nearly 58% of our centralized or global evaluations are joint and interagency exercise. This really gives us, the opportunity and the space to see, the broader contribution of the UN to specific aspects where UNFPA has a stake. And having said this, I have to acknowledge that joint evaluations are sometimes very complex, often require more time and resources due to their scale and complexity. But I would say that when they are well executed, they are a very strategic investment that brings greater legitimacy and credibility to support a more cohesive and effective response to today's complex global chains. And this is really so much aligned with all the discussions and all the discourse around the UNAT, the UN reform, as well as in terms of making the UN fit for purpose, but also fit for the future. So this is one of the evaluation type that we have among the many of other evaluation within the UN system. But I think this is really very powerful in terms of bringing the different actors together, and then it goes beyond the UN, goes beyond the bilateral, multilateral. It really encompasses all stakeholders, government, civil society, private sector, as well as those right holders on the ground. So yeah, there are pros and cons, but I think If you ask me, is it really worth, to do a joint interagency system-wide evaluation? I think it's worth the investment and the effort. Over.
Thank you so much, Masai. And absolutely, we know that this kind of collaboration using evaluation and sharing data is what drives change. In fact, we have two questions by Mr. Samsul Hussein Sadi in the chat, in the questions, about the extent to which past evaluations of the UN have demonstrated that the organization can adapt its strategies and operations. And have we seen evaluation effectively drive change? And I will put Julia on the spot, but first about WFP. But first, I want to share my own experience, which is that WFP 8 years ago, more than that, decided or saw that it was moving its work more to country level. Julia spoke earlier about how WFP changed over time its focus from just, I shouldn't say just, scratch my just, but from providing direct aid to a much broader role. So then the WFP decided and invested on country evaluations quite seriously, invested a lot in capacity building. Then the need arose as those evaluations started to take place, the need arose to say, well, what are we learning across? And so it invested in impact evaluations that looked at programmatic level across. So just to say, things move slowly, but they move, and they move because we pay attention and because evaluation helps us. It's not the only thing, but it helps us to use that uncomfortable mirror and find solutions and ways forward. So Julia, I'll turn it over to you if you have something to add to Mr. Sadi's question.
Thank you, Tessie. So I understand that Mr. Sadi's question is around how we use evaluation findings to drive organizational learning, accountability, and reform. So the answer really in WFP is, as you say, Tessie, we've changed the kind of, and we've expanded, in fact, the types of evaluations that we do over time. We've also set up a function that works much more at country level, as you mentioned, Tessie, so that we're organized into now 5 regions, so that when those regions receive demands or requests from donors, for example, or from host governments or from other partners to do evaluations, we can support the quality of those exercises at country and regional level by having evaluation experts in post that can support the exercise, that can help with its dissemination, and that can do the final quality assurance on the product so that we make sure the evaluations are more robust. That's one thing that's helped. Another thing that's helped is that in WFP, there is quite a robust system in terms of the take-up and use of evaluation recommendations. And that's also something that's developed over time, Tessie. So for each evaluation that we do at centralized level, i.e. that we commission here in Rome, it goes to the executive board, which is a key accountability and learning mechanism. So that's all the member states who are members of WFP's governing body. The management side have to produce a management response at the same time, saying how they will action the evaluation recommendations, and if they don't accept them, explaining why. And then those responses are inserted into a sort of corporate system. And every year, management has to update its reporting on those recommendations that it's accepted and say whether or not the recommendation has been implemented, and if it hasn't, why it hasn't. And then following from that, there's another reporting system, which again goes to the executive board and to various other bodies, which says, this is the progress on implementing the evaluation and other oversight recommendations like those from audit. So there's really quite a tight feedback loop in terms of the recommendations. And that's why we put a lot of effort on ensuring that our recommendations are formulated in participation with stakeholders. So we have workshops where we discuss with the key stakeholders the recommendations, who should implement them, how they're formulated, and whether they really meet the needs of stakeholders, so that by the time the final evaluation report is produced, the stakeholders have participated in the formulation of those recommendations. I would say that's the main vehicle in terms of accountability. For learning, we have lots of different mechanisms, even as I speak. We are implementing a forum, which we're jointly leading with the programme function of WFP on an evaluation of emergency preparedness. So we try and make sure that we engage with different platforms within the organisation, and we go out globally as far as we can to really kind of disseminate our findings. Thanks, Tessie, back to you.
Thank you, Julia. And that's just a note to say this kind of conversation matters, and that the UN colleagues and all of us who work with them, we're all working together to try and make things better. So this is for real. It's not just presentations. We're really puzzling out how to do this. And thank you for your question, Mr. Sadi. Very important one. So now we want to hear from our audience. We've been hearing from our audience in the Q&A button and also on our LinkedIn. And at the same time, we are ready to listen, to hear from you and bring some of your voices in the room. So if you'd like to speak and comment or ask a question, please go ahead and line up to do that. And I will remind you, we just have a few minutes for this, and to keep your question to 15 seconds. And just raise your hand if you'd like to speak, and our moderators are going to be looking out for you. In the meantime, there is a question that was in the chat that I wanted to speak a little bit to have our panelists speak a little bit to. And that is, I know that there's a response in writing, but Taipei, I wanted to call on you around the way in which we're really able to respond to humanitarian assistance issues honestly and move away from the politics through evaluation. Can you speak to that a little bit, please?
Yes, it is a challenge that comes with the publicization of evaluation reports, as I was mentioning earlier. Because they're public, there is a risk that some of the findings could be politicized, or that we move past the actual elements that are in the report that are provided to help with shaping policies and improving implementation, and that can be used for different purposes. So what we've been doing in UNESCO, at least, to try to make sure that it's not that evaluations are independent and that evaluations are not driven by other motives. We have set up a policy in which it is mandatory to set aside 3% of all operational budgets for monitoring and evaluation primarily. So that is true for regular program budget of UNESCO, but also for all projects that are funded through voluntary contributions, meaning all of these projects need to set aside 3% of their budget to make sure that a midterm evaluation or a final evaluation is led. So this has helped with ensuring that there's appropriate budget to do evaluations, and also limit some of the risk of having evaluations become politicized.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. So I see Mr. Sadi is first on with a raised hand. Mr. Sadi, over to you.
Thank you so much, Tessie. Hopefully you are listening to me. Can I continue?
Yes, please. Just keep it to, you know, 30 seconds.
Sure. Sure, thank you. We know that I'm working in monitoring evaluation for the last 5 years. So I have been seeing some of the projects from UN funded and USAID and others, lots of donor funded, are going to be failed for some reason. But somehow, whenever we are going to in evaluation report, but somehow we didn't see any kind of looks like the failure report that would be much appreciating for the future of the project design. So if there any initiative for our next future funding, as we know that our funding landscape is collapsing day by day, So how we can evolve this kind of failure project into real solution in the next of the upcoming 15 to 10 years actually.
Thank you. Thank you for that. We've had another person raise her hand and then she disappeared. So don't be shy. We have room for one more comment or question. If you would like to raise your hand again. Okay. You don't have to. So let me just put in the room one more question that we got from our LinkedIn colleague. Let me just find it here. From Peter Wandasi. We had a question. I like the concept of evaluation as an uncomfortable mirror. It explains why there is significant resistance among some program implementers at country levels, especially when evaluation criteria aims at strengthening accountability and transparency. So I wanted to see if one of our panelists here would like to take on this question of resistance and how does the UN what mechanisms are there to manage resistance and help evaluation be accepted and used? Anyone from our panel would like to comment on that?
Okay, well, if nobody else is coming in, Tessie, I can help out. I mean, I can say that in WFP, we have two mechanisms essentially. One is an institutional mandate. So our office is mandated essentially by the executive board to do independent evaluations of at different levels. And that mandate's enshrined in a policy and then a strategy and then a charter. And we have the governance arrangements around that. So having an institutional mandate really helps because country offices or the evaluand, in a sense, know that it's not optional. We always try and consult to make sure that where we do have room for maneuver, we're as flexible and helpful and so on as we can be. But having that institutional machinery and mandate behind us really helps. But the second part of it is more the soft element. How do you make evaluation palatable to an evaluand, whether that's at country level or whether it's a program that maybe has some hesitation or some resistance, as you say, around an external team coming in? And what we try and do there is we try and consult at every stage. So we develop a terms of reference and we share that with the country office and we ask them, are these really the questions that you want answered? Does this really serve your learning needs? That's one way. Then we try and make sure that we broker meetings between the independent team and the country office or the program lead so that they get to know each other, they know who they're talking to, and we try and ensure that our evaluation teams are sufficiently well briefed that they inspire confidence. And then we walk through the process with the unit or the division or the country office being evaluated so that they are cited on the evaluation at all stages. And we also consult with them, as I mentioned earlier, on the recommendations. So nothing comes out of the blue. We try and make it an accompanied process. We try and make it as non-threatening a process as possible. And we try and inspire confidence in the findings and the evidence and in the utility of the exercise for them by showing our commitment and understanding and professionalism at different stages. Thanks. Back to you, Tessie.
Thank you, Julia. Unfortunately, we're running out of time to have more of this conversation, but we're not done. There's some very interesting questions in the chat. Luciana is asking, what implications does this have for our evaluation competency framework? Well, a lot. And this is something we're going to have to work together on in the future. We will leave you thirsty for more of this conversation. So as we are at the top of the hour, I just want to give 15 to 30 seconds to each panelist to tell us one of the highlights, one of the key takeaways that they have from this discussion as we prepare to conclude. So let's start with you, Taipei.
I'd say for me, what was an interesting point was Nia Marie's points on methodology and how we should think beyond the traditional methods that we use and be open to new tools for evaluation to adapt and to be more fit for purpose in the future.
Thank you. Really, we can fold that into the competency evaluator competency revision. Thank you. Mesai, over to you. What is your takeaway?
I think for me, there are three aspects that we need just to focus on based on, all the discussion that we have had. One is and having, the right balance about, the three aspects. One is looking backward with hindsight, looking inward with insight, and looking forward with foresight. I think these are, the key critical elements that we need to bear in mind, while the global dynamics is really shifting, in a very rapid manner. All right.
Thank you, Mesai. Really important points there. Namari, over to you.
Thank you very much for this whole session. There were so many different inspiring points raised by everybody, but I suppose the most inspiring one for me was Taipei's point about the UN being born out of crisis. And in the world of crisis we are, this will keep us all going and motivated, I believe. And as evaluation functions, let's reflect on how we can be part of the evidence-based solution in this world. Thank you.
Thank you, Namari. That's a really important point about how we move into the future. Julia, over to you.
Thank you. I think colleagues have already captured what I would say, but I suppose what stays with me is the image of an uncomfortable mirror, especially in a time of crisis, and that the UN is just one part of a wider system and a wider picture. And maybe sometimes we can be insightful but modest about what our contribution is. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. And as I wrap up, just a big thank you and applause. Invite you for virtual applause for our amazing speakers, our partners, all of you who joined, and of course the people behind the scenes who have made it all possible and worked so hard to bring together this dialogue. This was the third series of the Future of Evaluation Dialogues, so stay tuned for the fourth one next month. You can find the registration link in the chat. It's being posted as we speak. So as we leave, I invite you to carry back this energy and the questions. We've just touched on points around our agenda for the future, and there is more conversation and more things to design together. So let's keep doing it. Before you go, there will be a brief 2-question survey for you. We are evaluators and we must walk the talk. So we need your feedback for today's session and appreciate it if you would complete it. So thank you again for today. Thank you to everyone. Until next time. Bye from me.